Hello, and welcome to the Advancing Equitable and Green Jobs webinar, our final one in the Levers for Change series. My name is Katie Jones. I'm the Community Program and Policy Manager with the Center for Energy and Environment. We're excited to be talking about models and pathways cities can explore to advance equitable and green careers in your own community. Starting with CEE and who we are a nonprofit organization that promotes energy efficiency to strengthen the economy while improving the environment, working with homes, businesses, and communities. We touch all aspects that are critical to advancing energy efficiency, from programs to cold climate research. We do consulting, work on policy, as well as offer financial tools so that people can make the impacts that they want on clean energy. To start, let's get a quick lay of the land of our clean energy workforce. Recent studies of clean energy workforce highlight the disparities in representation amongst us. Two that stand out that are underrepresented in particular are Black individuals and women. You can see here highlighted in yellow that are in our energy efficiency workforce, and specifically you can see that the percent in our sector is lower than the national workforce averages. Another issue is that we have a growing worker shortage. In 2018, 85% of energy efficiency employers reported having difficulties in hiring. And given our current employment environment, I can only imagine that that's intensifying. Furthermore, the baby boomers are starting to retire, and it's estimated that 29% of the existing workforce will retire by 2026. And these clean energy workforce issues are happening in the age of increasing need for them. The IPCC report that came out just a few weeks ago emphasizes again the need to transition to clean energy to tackle one of the biggest threats that we're facing, which is climate change. And we're going to need the clean energy workforce for us to get there. And it's for that reason I'm excited to hear today from three inspirational speakers to give us the good news on how these issues are being addressed locally. We'll first hear from Marquita Keys at the City of Minneapolis on the green career programs she runs. Then from Russ Stark at the City of St. Paul about job creation initiatives on the east side of the river. And lastly, we'll hear from Sarah Northrup to talk about the workforce development program supported by Xcel Energy. So now I'm excited to turn it over to Marquita, the Green Career Programs Coordinator with Minneapolis. She's been serving with the city for over a decade, and her current work was featured in a recent issue of Midwest Energy News. Take it away, Marquita.
All right, thank you, Katie. I will attempt here to make my technology work. Put this into correct mode. All right, so my name is Marquita Keys. I work for the City of Minneapolis Health Department. I have actually not been with the city for 18 years. It's more like 16, almost 16, I think, but not quite 18. So I'll just get started. I am speaking today on the Green Career Exploration Program. And I kind of wanted to start with providing some sort of context around the health department and the different divisions and where the Green Career Program lives in the health department. So the Minneapolis Health Department, not to be confused, of course, with the MDH, the Department of Health, has 5 divisions: policy and community program, the Office of Violence Prevention, environmental health, and our admin team. And then we have our environmental programs team. And that's where the Green Career Program lives. So environmental programs has 2 divisions. One is the Lead and Healthy Homes team. The other is environmental services. Environmental services consist of regulation. So we actually employ inspectors who do field inspections and respond to environmental complaints across the city, representing usually 4 different districts, different now through COVID as we are understaffed, but these folks respond to anything related to air quality, noise, odor, spills, protecting the waterways and rivers, protecting the what people experience in their homes, as well as what actually originates from commercial businesses. And then we have a monitoring team, so folks who monitor wells, who monitor noise levels, and then we also have the initiatives program. So the initiative program is where the Green Career Program sort of originated. The initiative program is it was an opportunity for myself and my colleagues to explore sort of our passions, what motivates us to get to work in the morning, and also an opportunity for us to respond to climate change. So as I mentioned, the initiative project, which started before I came into the health department, was an opportunity to explore both purpose and meaning in our everyday work, to support and get resources for the initiatives alongside our regular day-to-day work commitments, and to explore innovative solutions to the city and nation's climate goals. So examples in the health department of the different initiatives are biochar. So biochar is a soil amendment. It creates carbon sinks, responding to environmental and climate change. We have a city tree program. We have an individual that works across the city to increase the urban tree canopy. The Green Cost Share, which you all are probably familiar with, subsidizes modifications to local businesses to reduce their carbon footprint. And then the Green Career Exploration Program, of which I have come to speak with you about today. I'm talking really fast. I'm a fast talker, so I'll try to slow down so I can meet my 15-minute goal. Okay, so the purpose of the Green Career Program is to engage youth, to collaborate with community, to leverage existing programs and opportunities that impact exposure, education, and credentialing opportunities for individuals who have been historically excluded and are thus underrepresented in environmental and sustainability fields. So the program itself, actually, we began to explore the opportunity when I came to the health department back in 2013 to think through like some initiatives. So I have some background in education, and actually was planning to be a teacher. And so trying to couple both my passion of education with the work I was doing in environmental programs, and also respond to the fact that, you know, the city of Minneapolis Health Department and probably health departments across the state and the nation didn't have a whole lot of diversity. And so trying to open up opportunities for others to sort of follow in my path. So for further background, back in 2013, the exploration phase kind of began. And then in 2015, 2016, I started to reach out to school administrators, Minneapolis public schools specifically, to sort of inquire as to how we could support their STEM education. And those reaches were specific to certain communities. So green zone communities where there are a significant number of Black and Brown kiddos. So that started with elementary schools. And what we found right away is that elementary school admin staff were really committed to getting their kiddos' math and reading levels increased, and so really couldn't take advantage of any sort of deviation from those commitments. And so what sort of worked for me was finding a champion in each individual school, a teacher, a principal, to sort of dig into this opportunity and say, we're willing to take some funding from you. How can you support us in the classroom? How else with funding? So through that opportunity, we provided funds for youth to expand their environmental learning. We partnered with these educators to provide content expert speakers in the classroom. So both my colleagues I could enlist that I didn't work directly with, to talk about a wide array of environmental both concerns and ways that kiddos could impact their environment, and as well as the work and the career opportunities that these youth could employ if they were interested. And we also resourced experiential learning opportunities for these kiddos. And so if that was like getting a trip to the water treatment facility, which is super cool for the youth, or getting them up to Wolf Ridge for a weekend or a couple days through the week, we would resource those opportunities for youth. So what started as these one-to-one, like one-off classroom experiences with a champion teacher eventually evolved into a direct partnership with the Minneapolis Public Schools Guys and Gems program. The Guys is Guys in Science and Engineering, and Gems is Girls in Engineering, Math, and Science. And it's a summer and after school program offering a suite of opportunities for youth to choose sort of what they want to focus on over the summer. So they do engineering the ride, they build bikes, and then they ride them all over the neighborhood. They do boat building, so they build a canoe, and then they get on the river. So all about getting kiddos sort of involved in the engineering aspect, and then getting them outdoors and into their environment. One of those options was it still is, Expedition Minneapolis, and that's all about getting youth into their environment, teaching them how they impact their environment. So learning about soil quality, tree canopy, protecting their waterways. So really all of the things we were doing and still are doing in the Environmental Programs Division. So fast forward a couple of years, this sort of gives a description of the Guys and Gems STEM Academy. So of course, to get youth immersed in rigorous STEM learning activities with real world effects and connections. And Expedition Minneapolis specifically allows youth to discover the richness of the urban forest that we call Minneapolis. And so I worked, like I said, with both my colleagues in environmental programs and actually a lot of folks in public works. And then the people we couldn't find across the city to sort of get into the classroom, I contracted with. So like reached out to the Minneapolis Park Board and said, hey, could you come out and talk to the kids about how they identify trees in their community? So we did lessons on tree identification, stormwater lessons, soil science and lead in the soil, urban ag, aquaponics with Spark Y, an environmental justice bus tour, and eventually sort of added another level of training as an introduction to solar. So separate from Expedition Minneapolis, but still within the Guys and Gems STEM framework. And then also I just want to mention what started out as like having these content experts, just like pushing them into the classroom and having them speak to youth, has now been evolved into each summer developing an actual lesson plan aligned with the state standards that teachers can sort of validate, like having us in the classroom, and even maybe one day get some youth some credit or some credit recovery, things like that. Present day, still doing that work in the middle school. So every summer we partner with the Guys and Gems program. We set time aside to meet with the director, and she comes and makes all these grand requests, and we make all these plans, and then we get the teachers on board once they're done with their school year, and they're like, nah, we're gonna do it entirely different. So it's fun to work with the school teachers and support them in their summer learning and actually allow them a break in the classroom. Like when we're in the classroom, they get to sit back and learn. And so all of the lessons are coupled with an outdoor learning opportunity as well. So like if we're learning about soil in the classroom one day, or for one 15 to 20 minute lesson, we get outside and the kiddos will take their tubes and they'll collect soil, and then we'll have it like pseudo-analyzed or maybe even seriously analyzed for lead in the soil, and they can take it home and talk to their parents and things like that. Sort of to parallel that opportunity though, we began to think about the middle school versus the high school versus young adults and their opportunities to continue to engage in the STEM learning, but also where they could get some either high school credit or be high school grads and say, you know, I'm not interested in the 4-year college or the 2-year college. I kind of just want to have a more direct path to these opportunities. And so trying to figure out how we could get people credentialed in some of these opportunities. And so spent one summer engaging both urban scholars, seasonal technicians, or folks we hire in environmental programs to do inspections, and then environmental interns across the health division, and enlisting them and taking these credentialing opportunities and then providing us feedback into how it was for them and how we could tailor these learnings to high school students. And so we had a summer or two actually where folks did an erosion and sediment control credentialing opportunity, and then they did inspections. They worked with a local passive house design company and learned about the passive house and visited passive house examples. We did an energy efficiency training a couple of years back with CEE. So they went over to St. Paul and we're in the lab all day learning about how to make their homes energy efficient, a right to know hazmat training, and environmental justice bus tour, and also a solar training. The solar training we received the most feedback on, and it was mostly around it being online. The young people thought it was awful, actually. They thought it was hard to follow and it was kind of boring. And it was like, really, like if we were going to offer this opportunity to high school students or young adults, it needed to be in person. And so right away took that feedback and planned to do an in-person offering, and then came COVID. And so we're spending the breadth of the winter sort of planning out these learnings in person. So leasing space in North Minneapolis at the training center, reaching out to the Midwest Renewable Energy Association where they did their online training and said, hey, could you send somebody to come and work in person with our interns, with our scholars? And they said yes, and then COVID happened, and then we kind of waited and came up with a plan to have fewer students in the classroom, to enlist community, to reach out to Summit Academy. And we're able to successfully host the first Green Career sponsored solar training in the pandemic fall of 2020. And made sure that that training location was accessible, so on the bus line in North Minneapolis, outreach to Summit, outreach to Emerge, outreach to North High, all of the agencies who would potentially have access to young people in the community who would be interested in taking the training. And so in the pandemic fall of 2020, offered 2 separate trainings of basic PV solar associate training and credentialing, one to what I call the community cohort, and to another that directly targeted the 20-week Summit electrician apprentices. And so did that through pandemic fall 2020, and have since been trying to offer these trainings around both schedules, around interest, around background. We found that the trainings are very rigorous. We want people to be successful, so how can we prep people or offer prerequisites to set people up for success? So this is just a list of the trainings that the MREA we have partnered with to offer training. So the only courses required for sitting for a credentialing exam are the basic PV, the site assessment, and system design. That class or those classes are 24 hours. Everything else you see here is optional, but also everything else increases the likelihood that our target population, the people we invite into the space to train, are successful. So like working with electricity is optional. It's an 8-hour class though, so it's a commitment. Labs and design scenarios is optional, but it's in hands-on outdoors, sort of dig into and apply what you learned, but it's optional, and as well as is the exam prep and the exam for that matter. Any individual who sits through these trainings, who shows up, who is committed to the learning opportunity, are invited to an internship. They don't need to pass the exam. They don't need to sit for the exam, as long as they're committed to being in the space and moving through the course progression. And then just to talk a little more about that, the paid internship opportunity is paid by or subsidized by the health department up to 160 hours at up to $19 per hour. So in 2021, we presented green topics, lessons, and training to over 200 Minneapolis public school students. We're able to resource training and credentialing to 50 North Minneapolis youth and adults, solar training, and 40% of those trained youth and adults were enlisted and paid internships. Of that 40%, 10% were offered full-time job opportunities. Some future goals of the Green Career Program are to increase partner organizations. So we work currently with Summit Academy, Sabathani, McGizzy, the Center for Energy and Environment, REP, of course, is where we lease space, to increase the North Minneapolis youth and adult program participation by 20%, to increase North Minneapolis intern training placement by 20%, to expand the training model to South Minneapolis. So currently working on another satellite training space at Sabathani, to network and support increased full-time job placement, and to expand into alternative trainings, EV training, energy efficiency training. Some of our partners that are providing collaborative support and youth cohorts to come over and get trained are MPS, as mentioned, the Northside Safety Net, the Minnesota STEM Partnership, McGizzy, and there's a list of others. Some of our training partners are Go Solar Kids and Just Be Solar. We work pretty closely with them to provide entry-level solar training. The Midwest Renewable Energy Association out of Wisconsin provides the NAPSEP credentialing training. And then these are some of our other past partners. And then places where we've hosted interns or have had interns hosted are Blue Sky, Greenway, True North, REP, and Sundial, and others. And here's some photos, some youth in action. So the one on the top left is some kiddos from actually Henry High School's Community Connected Academy, building a solar array model. And on the right, we have some urban scholars teaching a lesson to some Summer Expedition Minneapolis youth. And on the bottom, there is a group of Summit Academy post-electrical apprentice grads doing their solar NAPSEP credentialing training. So they're at the lab session on the bottom. And That is all I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Marquita. It was fascinating, the number of entities that you're coordinating and partnering with. A lot of great work happening there. We're next going to transition over to the other side of the river to Russ Stark over in St. Paul. So Russ is the Chief Resilience Officer for the City of St. Paul. He's previously served as a member of the City Council. He's been a consistent champion of equity and sustainability. And I've had the honor to work with him on a number of projects and know him to be a problem solver. And I think the work that he's done here and some of the workforce initiatives in St. Paul is really indicative of how sticky it is, the green job area and the workforce development we need to do. So I'm excited to pass this over to Russ.
Well, thanks, Katie. And it was really fun hearing Marquita's presentation because I've heard little bits and pieces about what Minneapolis has been doing, but it was exciting to see it kind of all in one place, and kudos for all the great work over there. All right, so again, I am Russ Stark, the Chief Resilience Officer. I am based in the Mayor's office here in St. Paul and oversee the city's work in climate action and sustainability broadly. And over the last couple of years, we created this new initiative called Building Green St. Paul. Unlike Marquita, we a little bit needed to start from scratch. And I'll get into why in a moment. Mayor Carter came in office 4 years ago with three kind of pillar values of his administration, and those are equity, resilience, and innovation. And so we are all tasked with the city with trying to kind of use these three core values in all of our work. 2019, the city developed our first ever climate action resilience plan, and in part through that process, we got a lot of feedback from the community about ways to stay engaged with the city on the plan, and in particular about ways to make sure that our climate action work was equitable and benefiting our most vulnerable populations and folks who hadn't been able to break into some of the sectors where green jobs and careers are growing. So we came up with this program goal of providing St. Paul residents from marginalized and underrepresented communities, but especially women and Black, Indigenous, and people of color residents with climate career pathways, specifically into the construction and building trades. Part of the opportunity that we saw was that there is a lot of construction going on in St. Paul right now, and at a scale that we haven't seen in a long time. On the left, you see, this is actually from last fall, so looks different out there today, but this is Highland Bridge, the former Ford plant site down in the Highland Park neighborhood. You see the central stormwater feature, and all of this has been under construction for a little over a year now. Maybe it's two, I lose track of time these days. But so tons of construction jobs in a variety of fields going on here in our community, and over a 10-year period. It's going to be a 10-year build out overall for that 120-acre site. The buildings being built there are some of the greenest buildings that have been built to date in St. Paul. And so what an opportunity to get folks some hands-on experience in the construction trades in some of these practices that are getting greener. And then on the right, you see a rendering of what's being called the Heights, literally opposite corner of St. Paul. We've got the former Hillcrest golf course that is now owned by the St. Paul Port Authority, 110-acre site. And collectively, the Port Authority, the city, and others, we are aiming to actually build out a net zero energy, net zero carbon community there. So again, an opportunity for a lot of construction jobs right here in the community over a long period of time. Often in the construction industry, one of the challenges that some folks have with breaking in is that the work can be all over the place. You certainly need a driver's license, and oftentimes you need access to a vehicle just in order to get into the door. So I mentioned the need to start from scratch here in St. Paul. Part of that is because the city does have a youth jobs program that historically has been mostly about summer jobs. It's now, there are some year-round opportunities now. It's called Right Track. But for the most part, with our adult programs, they are run by Ramsey County. And that goes back about 20 years when the city decided to mostly cede that function over to the county. And so in order to build this new thing, we really needed to start somewhat from scratch. Not that there weren't already activities going on in and around St. Paul in the area of certainly construction training programs, to a lesser degree, kind of green training programs and career opportunities. But the need to kind of start slow and to start small and to build some relationships. And so I, with some help from a couple of others, reached out to a lot of the players here locally in this realm, had a lot of one-on-ones, talked about what some of the current barriers are to our residents getting more opportunities in the green and construction careers field, created kind of an ad hoc table of partners to start working on this together, very willing partners, I have to say. And I would say in that whole conversation, it was pretty clear early on that one of the key decision points was going to be working with the union construction trades or not. And I think that folks have had a variety of experiences working with the construction trades. There are lots of construction trades training centers right here in St. Paul. We are in general a very positive pro-union town. And I know that there's also been and continues to be some challenges for communities of color and women to breaking into the union construction trades. They are actively working on that issue and really wanted to partner with us on this program. And we figured that the construction jobs in the union trades are some of the best paying. They are ways to create kind of those livable wage, middle class jobs that some of these career paths don't necessarily lead to. And so we made the conscious decision to partner very closely with the union construction trades. We had a long conversation about who to focus on serving. And so I was really interested in the city of Minneapolis's approach in starting with youth. I think it makes a lot of sense, but then also working with some adults. We identified that here in St. Paul, there were more existing programs working with youth and fewer programs available for sort of that young adult, 18 really all the way up to 30 kind of space where people are, for the most part, out of high school, but maybe haven't latched on to a particular career and have an opportunity to get some training and earn a better living. We discovered that the language that we use in talking about these programs becomes really important, particularly when you're working with the construction trades. And so the program that I'll describe here in a moment, we've talked about as an apprenticeship readiness program. And the idea here is that we are building pathways by creating kind of steps on a ladder to help folks get into the trades apprenticeship programs. And then this idea where to start, because we're somewhat working from scratch. Who do we focus on in terms of those early populations or partners? And we went round and round with that, and we decided to reach out and like whoever really wanted to partner with us to help meet our goals. We decided we're just going to do something, and so we moved forward. I have to say that we probably couldn't have done this work without the support that we've received from the Bloomberg American Cities Climate Challenge. I won't get into the details here, but I was literally the lead staff person on this project. As I described my role, I do a lot of work across climate and sustainability, and this is just sort of one small project on my plate. And so the support, staffing support that we got from Bloomberg was really essential to getting as far as we have. The partnership table that we built out included these groups. The key folks here, the St. Paul Building Trades Council, Ramsey County Workforce Solutions, Chamber of Commerce has been at the table, Xcel Energy, CEE, Ryan Companies, who are actually the developers of the Highland Bridge site, Ujama Place, and Ujama ended up being our first implementation partner. Ujama is a nonprofit that serves men who are re-entering the community after incarceration, mostly Black men. and the Construction Careers Foundation. And so we built out, working with UJAMA and a bunch of other partners, but at the core of that, the building trades, a program, again, as I mentioned, just to get started. And we used the curriculum called the MC3, which is a nationally recognized curriculum among the union construction trades. It's like a construction careers overview program at the heart of a curriculum that UJAMA created and ran. We brought in outside speakers, including CEE and other folks who have expertise in the energy efficiency and clean energy space to add that layer on top of that basic construction careers exploration. This cohort of 4 was our first program and wrapped up in the fall, and all 4 individuals completed the program. Since then, one of the big things that's happened is that this sort of ad hoc table that we call Building Green St. Paul has now transitioned and has all of us plus some other folks are now the Construction and Green Careers Committee of Ramsey County's Workforce Innovation Board. And that has been going on since about last October. Again, because Ramsey County is sort of the lead agency on this side of the river and workforce, that made a lot of sense. They've got some staffing capacity to help move things along. And we've really created a strong partnership with the county in this space to the point where the city and county have agreed to, and city council action is pending to fund using American Rescue Plan dollars a number of workforce initiatives, but one of them is going to be focused in this construction and green careers space. And the idea here is that this pilot we created with JAMA Place is one piece, but that ultimately we want to build out a whole ecosystem of programs with multiple partners and potentially reaching multiple populations across the community. To that point, UJAMA Place is actually now planning a second cohort. They're hoping to have 15 folks this time, and they've actually strengthened the ties to the union construction trades. The program is going to be based out at the Painters Union Training Center just north of St. Paul. And just some quick kind of closing thoughts here. I think there's a whole lot of opportunity, and I mentioned some of those barriers of that we've identified of folks getting into green careers in the construction trades. Every conversation I've had almost from day one, people talk about the issue of transportation and the need to have a driver's license and the need to be able to have access to a vehicle. We've elevated some of those conversations working with the construction trades, and there have been conversations with some of the union developers about the possibility of company cars being made available to folks who are in apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship programs. Say, for example, that first 6 months to a year before people have made enough money to be able to afford their own vehicle. We've kicked around ideas about this ourselves, about could someone, a partner organization, the city, someone create a fleet of vehicles that could sort of turn over and someone could get access to a vehicle for 6 months at a time. There's all sorts of issues with liability and all those sorts of things that of course come up, and it's potentially solvable. And I think that one barrier would really help knock down a lot of doors potentially. The folks who I showed in the photograph who completed the program, 3 of them are currently working to get their driver's license. They either never had it or had previously expired. So UJAMA is continuing to work with them on that. 2 of them are now in a welding class at St. Paul College to kind of continue their training. It's going to be a multi-step process for that particular population to get them ready for an apprenticeship program. And so part of our thinking is that we need to create programs for folks at all, kind of starting from all different places, from those who may just need a little bit of help to get in the door, to folks for whom it's going to be a 3 or 4 step process before we could potentially get them lined up for apprenticeship. And with that, I will wrap up and look forward to the rest of the conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Russ. I think, yeah, you made a good point that every situation is unique, and that how someone comes into these processes is going to, we're going to need to have a specific path for them. And one of those is one that Sarah is working on. So Sarah Northrup is with CEE. She's the program workforce program manager overseeing planning, strategic implementation, and project management for the workforce development program. She brings a lot of experience as being a program coordinator at the Training and Education Center for the Lutheran Social Services of Minnesota, helping to serve individuals and families of income qualifying programs. So I'm really excited to turn this over to her.
Hey everyone, thanks Katie. Thanks for having me here. And it's great to see a lot of familiar faces. Russ, I just want to do a shout out that we're really so thankful that you partnered with, CE was able to, we had our own Cheng Vang, our workforce training manager, was able to be the instructor for Ujama Place training, and we're just thankful for that and that opportunity. And Marquita, it's great to see you again. Marquita was here at our training sites giving a presentation just about the solar training program specifically with the city of Minneapolis just the other week. So I'm going to share my screen. So my name is Sarah Northrup, and I am the Workforce Program Manager here at Center for Energy and Environment. I'm going to share a little bit more about our Excel-funded program that we had that just launched a few weeks ago here at CE. So what I want to do first is just step back and talk about how this funding came about with Excel. And so back in 2020, the Public Utilities Commission, they initiated a docket asking Minnesota's investor-owned utilities to create plans for investments to reduce carbon and increase economic stimulus. And so, Excel proposed this funding for a workforce program that would, the priorities would be twofold. One part would be to, increase economic stimulus, increase job opportunities here in Minnesota, specifically within the energy efficiency workforce. And the part two of that would be to increase the number of BIPOC community members, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and women within the energy efficiency sector. And CE was having these conversations over the past several years. A lot of our contractors, installation contractors, as Katie mentioned at the beginning of our time together, that from a report that we did at CE with help from the McKnight Foundation, 85% of employers within the energy efficiency sector, reported facing hiring difficulties. So 85%, that was in 2018. That number has only grown, and we've seen that, the number of people who are able to find work within the clean energy sector, it grew. It is continued to grow, and we expect that it will only to continue to grow over the next couple of decades with increased funding. So the clean energy jobs grew about 10% in the second half of 2020, which is twice the average for overall job growth within the state. So in conversation with Excel, over the past 2 years, Excel filed a modification to their triennial conservation improvement program to launch a workforce program that would be funded for the next 3 years. And CE was very excited to be able to be the ones who are implementing this program. And kind of when we started off, we had to take a step back and decide, okay, where are we going to strategically draw participants from? And the focus for this Excel funded program is the green zones of Minneapolis, residents who live in green zones, South, North Minneapolis, large parts of those areas, as well as areas of concentrated poverty in St. Paul. And so we stepped back, we had conversations with folks at the city of Minneapolis, such as Marquita and others, to determine what programs, what organizations would be good and helpful for us to partner with. So these are some that we have been drawing participants from for our first cohort that just launched this first week, sorry, not this first week in March, but the week of March 28th, so 3 weeks ago. So we identified these partners: CAPI, HAP, Hmong American Partnership, Emerge, McGizzy, and urban roots. And I see a question right now in the chat, potentially. I don't know if anyone can.
Russ is just saying that it's great to see
Okay.
the partnerships.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay, great. So in conversations that we had early on, about 2 years ago, about getting feedback, how are we going to implement this program and create a cohort that is really supporting folks in getting through high quality training, it became apparent that it needed to be paid to increase retention, to make sure that the folks who are coming to the training, that they are able to complete the training itself. It's 5 weeks long. We decided that it needed to be paid from feedback we were getting from these partners. We also heard that wraparound support services were incredibly needed. This is something that Russ touched on in the end of his conversation about what they're doing with the city of St. Paul, but transportation is a huge barrier to construction trades and jobs within the energy efficiency workforce. A lot of, almost all of the installation contractors that we partner with, they do require, driver's license, of course, but they also require folks to, one day they'll maybe be in Roseville, the next day they'll be in Isanti, the next day they'll be somewhere else in St. Paul or Minneapolis. And it's really important that they have their driver's license. And so those wraparound support services, apart from just getting every day itself, being able to make sure that we can help folks obtain their driver's license so that they can be employed in the sector. That was a big starting point that we had a conversation around. Additionally, job placement assistance and career readiness. We made sure that throughout our training that we are providing opportunities for folks to kind of brush up on their skills. Maybe they need some practice with interviewing, getting the resume reviewed. That's something that we have staff that we are partnering with one of the organizations that was mentioned previously, CAPI. That organization has been able to provide us with, during the training, a career readiness training and related to resumes, related to interviewing skills. And I want to share a little bit more briefly just about CAPI and our relationship with CAPI. We, at the end of 2021, we applied for, CAPI applied for funding that were ARPA funds that were allocated to the city of Minneapolis City Council, and for the City of Minneapolis Green Industry Pathways proposal. They applied for it. CAPI received funding, and we were written into their grant as a subgrantee to provide training for over 30 Minneapolis residents that were over 18 years old for over 18 months with the City of Minneapolis Green Industry Pathways. So we're excited that we're able to partner with CAPI. They provide navigation support as well as case management during our training, which is great because it's able to ensure that participants are able to get to the training and also ensure that there's not any barriers that are in place that we see can cause people to drop out before they're able to get those credentials. And apologies, let me just go forward here. Okay. Katie, Matthew, just wanted to check quickly on time. I can plan on talking for
just a couple more minutes so we have some time for Q&A.
Okay, yep. So for this training that I've been discussing, we have starts off with a 5-week training that is working towards a credential from the Building Performance Institute called the Building Science Principles Certificate. And this lays a really nice foundation for folks in understanding more about building science, the vocabulary, as well as the job site safety that they'll need to be safely working on a work site. It also includes a lot of discussion around what is the landscape of energy efficiency careers. There's a lot of different paths that people can take within this sector. And so we want to make sure that they know and they understand the breadth and the depth of these careers that are out there here right in Minnesota. So this 5-week is actually what we have going on Currently, we're in the third week of the first 5-week cohorts. I'm at our training site. We are in North Minneapolis, right off of Broadway, 1 block off of Broadway on Emerson for our first training here. And we also talked about kind of the need for having that paid training. So folks are getting a stipend of $500 a week, as well as additional support services. They are getting gas and bus cards to help with transportation. Following the 5-week intensive classroom training, it leads into an internship track that goes for 4 months, where folks become temporary employees at CEE, earning $16.50 an hour. And there are also some medical dental benefits as well. That time during that internship is really to continue their learning. We're providing 2 different internship tracks for this first cohort that we're offering within this 3-year funding with Excel. In installation is one path that they can go, working as an installation worker or working as a home energy auditor and getting the credentials that they need to work in that sector. So both of those tracks, they will be getting hands-on field experience with employers. With installation, they'll be working directly on job sites with installation contractors that we at CE work really closely with. Those installation contractors we have well-established relationships with over the past 10 years, which has been a great process in getting to learn, getting feedback from them, and hearing more about the challenges that they're facing within the sector. Overall, the response has been really positive from the installation contractors in wanting to increase the number of people of color and women in the sector. We have been having conversations with contractors and finding ones that are really going to champion our efforts. Some of them, have been eager to get folks into the job sites, but maybe, are not as they're not as much of champions as of equity and diversity that we strive for within this project. And so something that we are looking to do with our employers is actually to continue to have kind of this cohort where we build expectations, but we also have some additional training for them on cultural competency and creating an inclusive work environment. I'm going to just maybe do this slide as the last slide so that we have time for questions at the end. Here are some pictures of our first cohort. This is just 2 days ago. This is a picture of some of the participants in the program. They're practicing air sealing techniques. We have some props in the left-hand corner. So one of our participants is using a foam gun to insulate. This is supposed to be a prop of like what it would look like in an attic from a bath fan, or a fan that you'd have in your bathroom. That's what it would look like from looking down through being in the attic. We also have folks that are kind of working together here at the bottom picture to insulate, put in some fiberglass insulation, and they're wearing suits and protective equipment that you would be wearing on the job as an installation installer. So yeah, it's been great. We've had 12 participants so far in this first cohort. We're looking forward to having our 4 additional cohorts that we will be having through this Excel funded program. So I am going to stop here and leave time for questions for Russ, Marquita, and myself.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, it's always fun to see those pictures of folks in action and the training in action. Yeah, so we're quite a cozy group here today. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to either put it in the chat or take yourself off mute and just ask away to our presenters. Otherwise, I have quite a list of questions because you spurred a lot of good questions or thoughts for me.
I'll just jump in the brief silence and say that both Marquita and Sarah talked about paying participants, and I forgot to mention that was a value of ours as well. And so the participants in the Drama Place program were paid a stipend of $15 an hour for their training time, and we really think that's key. It's really hard for people to enter these intensive training programs and not be paid for their time, and that's going to be a key, I think, best practice.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, no one has any questions right off the bat. Oh, here's one from Emily. And the question is, how would you suggest that, say, a nearby suburb get involved in one of these programs? Maybe, for example, someone like St. Louis Park. Maybe Sarah or Marquita, since you're working in neighboring areas.
Yeah, Emily, thanks so much for the question. I just want to say that this is, as of just this past week, we learned that we received funding from CenterPoint to expand our program model to suburban Hennepin County. So St. Louis Park potentially, and we'll probably, so reach back out to me because this is actually really good timing for your question. So would be focusing on folks who live in suburban Hennepin County area, and the funding was through 2024. So I can throw my contact info into the chat too, so we can follow up.
Awesome. Love when timing ends up like that.
I can add to that. I envision these models that we have described here today as being models, and that I always am inviting folks from other areas of the state, other neighboring jurisdictions, whether that be school districts or cities, to come in the space and observe, to talk to people. I think we've got some Hopkins school board members coming over for our next training, just to observe and speak with people in the class, speak with me to figure out what this model will look like in their jurisdiction.
That's awesome.
It's really interesting because in a way there's something particular about a city in terms of these programs. We are obviously in sort of a regional economy. I do think that because of the transportation issue, it is really important where the training programs are located in terms of people's ability to access them, accessible by transit, et cetera. And because of the focus on our program, of course, we're trying to serve St. Paul residents. There are also other programs, like ones run in partnership by the Met Council and others, Building Strong Communities, that are aimed at getting folks from throughout the region opportunities to get into the construction trades. And so we really kind of wrestled with this question, like, what's unique about what we're trying to do? And the uniqueness that we landed on was targeting St. Paul residents, number one, and green careers, number two. And so I think ultimately, like, we're going to learn from what Marquita and company have been doing, and we're all kind of creating an ecosystem together, and the transportation will be a key part of that.
And kind of on the theme of there's a lot of activity around workforce development and a lot of levels of government. I'm curious, Marquita, you've been working on green careers with MPS. Are you seeing any peer examples in other school jurisdictions or anything like that?
Well, as you might know, Minneapolis Public Schools each school operates kind of autonomously. And so what we can see happening between like one school, like I mentioned, the Henry High School Community Connected Academy. Community Connected Academy is a school within a school at Henry's High School, not necessarily happening at North or across the way at Edison. And so we can see like the different iterations of opportunities or the invitations for us to come into the school or invite the kiddos over. So I see that, as well as like I mentioned, the Hopkins schools, Robbinsdale, like just people with having interest in how they can implement these opportunities in their schools.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the St. Paul Building Trades already operate programs in a couple of the St. Paul high schools, and so there is sort of an ecosystem already within the St. Paul public schools. And one of the things that they talk about is that at one time, I think construction careers were seen as really interesting and valuable, and that in a lot of cases, there's a lot of talk about tech and college and other careers that are just like very different and not about working with your hands these days. And so there is sort of a barrier, I think, just in terms of people thinking about these opportunities. But there are a lot of good paying jobs out there. I think with solar in particular, one of the challenges can be the seasonality of the work, but it's like, but we've got to build out a set of skills that people can have, right? And solar is just one piece of that, and it tends to be one that people are interested and excited about. So it's a really good starting place.
Awesome. Well, on that note, we are at time. So I just want to say again, thank you to our presenters. Very, fascinating information. It's so timely, and with the climate emergency, as well as a gap in equitable jobs, this is the time that we need to be furthering green job training and compensating people as they're going through that training and figuring out the barriers to it. So thank you again for doing that work, and I hope we can expand it to greater Hennepin County, as well as outside of St. Paul and other places. So thank you again.
Thank you. Nice to see you.